Welcome back to Holding the Room. I'm Melissa Sierra, executive coach, founder of the Operators Intelligence Council, and Forbes contributor. Every time I say the word empathy in a boardroom, I watch the eyes roll. And I get it. Empathy sounds soft, like we're choosing feelings over results. So today, I'm going to make the case with data and with some things I've never said publicly before for why empathy is the single most valuable leadership asset you can build right now. Because the misconception is doing real damage. Empathy is not agreement. It's not absorbing everyone's emotions until you have none of your own. It's not a feeling circle before every all hands meeting. And it's definitely not weakness dressed up as leadership language. Empathy in leadership context is the ability to understand what someone is experiencing specifically, accurately, without needing them to spell it out for you. So here's what it looks like in practice. Your best engineer goes quiet for 3 weeks during an AI rollout, stops adding ideas in meetings, starts leaving at exactly 5 p.m. when she used to stay until 7. That silence is not disengagement. It's information. The empathetic leader reads it as information and asks the right question before the exit interview does it for them. This is a strategic capability, not a vibe, not a personality type, a skill you can build, develop, and deploy deliberately. And in a world where AI handles everything that can be measured, optimized, and processed at scale, the things that can't be measured are the entire competitive game. Empathy is not the consolation prize for leaders who can't do the technical work. It is the work, the most important work, the work that determines whether everything else sticks. VP of Engineering, brilliant, technically exceptional. His team had just completed one of the most complex AI infrastructure migrations his company had ever attempted. On time, under budget, the board was thrilled. His CEO sent a company-wide email celebrating him. 3 months later, 4 of his 7 engineers had resigned. He came to me, devastated. He couldn't understand it. The work was good. The results were there. What had he missed? When I asked him to walk me through the migration, specifically the human side of it, he described the rollout like a project plan. Timeline, dependencies, risk migration, budget allocation. He could tell me every technical decision and the reasoning behind it. I asked him, during those 8 months, did you ever ask your team what they were afraid of? He said, I told them what we're building. That's the gap. He communicated the technology, but he never communicated what the technology meant for the people who were building it, what it meant for their careers, their relevance, their identity as engineers in a company that was automating significant portions of what they had spent years becoming excellent at. The engineers didn't leave because the migration failed. They left because nobody ever acknowledged what it cost them to make it succeed. Nobody asked, nobody named it, and eventually they found organizations where someone might. And that is the empathy gap. And it's costing organizations their best people every single day. Organizations with aggressive AI rollouts are seeing burnout rates 3 times higher than those that moved more intentionally. 3 times. The number one reported cause? Leaders who communicated the technology without communicating what it meant for people. 77% 58% of executives say AI has increased their team's efficiency. 54% of employees say they feel less connected to their work than they did 1 year ago. Sit with that for a second. Efficiency is up, connection is down at the same time in the same organizations. And those two numbers are not a coincidence. They're a direct consequence of a leadership culture that optimized for output and forgot about the humans producing it. That gap between what the executive sees and what the team feels is the empathy gap. And it's showing up in retention, in discretionary effort, in the kind of creative risk taking that only happens when people feel safe enough to try something that might not work. Here's the business implication. Discretionary effort is where all the competitive advantage lives. It's the thing nobody can mandate, the extra hour, the idea shared in a meeting, the problem flagged before it becomes a crisis. You cannot buy discretionary effort. You can't measure it. You can only earn it, and specifically through empathy. I want to get real with you for a minute because I think there's something happening in leadership development space that we need to name. Empathy became a buzzword around 2020. It showed up in every leadership training, every DEI initiative, every executive development program. And then, predictably, it got diluted. It got reduced to be nice to your team and check in on people. Leaders started checking the empathy box without building, actually, the capability. And now, a few years later, I'm sitting across from executives who say things like, I do empathy. I ask my team how they're doing every Monday. And then in that same conversation, they tell me they have no idea why their best performer is thinking about leaving. Empathy is what you do with the answer. It's the ability to hear, I'm fine, and know that something is not. It's the discipline to follow up specifically, privately, without making it a performance, because you actually read the room. And that's a skill, and it takes practice, which means if you've been treating empathy like a checkbox, you haven't been practicing it. And the gap between checking a box and actually developing the capability is exactly where your best people are deciding whether to stay or go. I run a diagnostic with every coaching client I work with in the first session, and I call it the 3C diagnostic. 3 questions that tell me exactly where empathy is breaking down on a leadership team. And I want to walk you through all 3 in detail because each one is doing different work. Let's start with curiosity. Are you asking your team what they're afraid of losing, not just what they're excited to gain? This is the question most leaders skip. We're good at communicating the vision, the upside, the opportunity. This AI tool is going to save you 8 hours a week. This new process is going to scale the business. We're not good at saying, I know this change is hard. What are you most worried about losing? But here's why it matters. The emotional threshold is the adoption threshold. If your team has unaddressed fear about what a change means for their role, their relevance, their career, that fear doesn't go away because you didn't name it. It goes underground. And underground fears show up as passive resistance, slow adoption, compliance without commitment. The team technically doing the thing while privately deciding it won't work. The leaders who name the fear before the rollout, who actually sit with their teams and say, what are you worried about? Let's put it out there on the table. Those leaders see adoption rates that outperform everyone else. Not because they changed the strategy, because they addressed the emotional blocker that was sitting right in front of it. Second C, clarity. Do you know what you personally stand for in this transformation? Here's the hard truth that most people in a leadership program won't say out loud. Your team cannot follow a leader who is still privately figuring out what they believe in. Clarity is not about having all the right answers. It's about having a position, a stake in the ground. Here's what I believe about what we're building and why. Here's what I think this means for our team. Here's what I'm protecting while everything else changes. That sentence, said specifically, said out loud, said in a real conversation and not in a memo, is empathy in action. And it's people-oriented. And orientation is what teams need the most when the ground is shifting. The absence of that sentence, that's what creates anxiety that shows up as resistance. The last C, conviction. Are your communications earning trust or just compliance? Compliance looks like adoption metrics. Your team's using the tool, attendance is up, the KPIs are moving, and on paper, it looks like the change is working. Trust looks like advocacy. Your team isn't just using the tool. They're telling other people why it matters. They're defending the decision in conversations you're not even a part of. They're bringing new ideas for how to use it better. They're invested. The gap between compliance and advocacy is built through how you communicate, not what you communicate. It's built through consistency, showing up the same way when it's hard, just as much when it's easy. It's built through specificity, not we're committed to our people, but here's what we're specifically doing for the 3 people whose roles are changing the most. And it's built through honesty about uncertainty. I don't know exactly where this lands yet, and I want to figure it out with you, not for you. Which of these 3 C's is lowest for you right now? That's where you start today. Not all 3 at once, the lowest marking one first. Every leadership program tries to make executives more empathetic and then sends them back to organizations where incentive structure rewards speeds. The reporting structure punishes uncertainty, and the calendar leaves no room for the conversations empathy actually requires. Empathy doesn't fail because leaders lack it. It fails because organizations make it expensive to act on. You want to know if your organization values empathy? Count how many hours per week your managers have for conversations that aren't status updates. That number is your empathy budget, and most organizations have reduced it down to 0. Number 1, ask the fear conversation question before every major announcement, before your next all hands, your next team meeting, where you're rolling out something new. Schedule a 30-minute conversation with at least 2 or 3 key people on your team, not to get their buy-in, to ask, what are you most worried about losing in all of this? Listen without defending. Come back to the room with what you heard. Number 2, read what's not been said in meetings. This week, in your next team leadership meeting, pick one person and watch them. Not what they say, what they don't say. Where do they go quiet? When does their body language change? After the meeting, follow up with them directly. I noticed you went quiet when we talked about the timeline. What's going on there? That follow-up is empathy. It says, I see you, even when you're not performing for the room. Number 3, protect one slow conversation per week. One conversation with a team member, a peer, a direct report, where the agenda is simply nothing where you ask a real question and actually listen to the full answer before you respond. Not a check-in, a conversation. If your calendar doesn't have space for this, the problem isn't empathy, it's calendar design. Number 4, name the cost publicly. The next time you're asking your team to absorb a significant change, say this out loud. I know this is hard. Here's specifically what I think when I'm asking it of you. And here's what I want to make sure we're doing right together. That sentence, said in the room on record, is the most powerful empathy signal a leader can send because it proves you thought about human cost, not just the business case. Before your next team meeting, write down one question you generally do not know the answer to. Not a strategic question, a human one. Something that would tell you something real about what your team is experiencing right now that they haven't said out loud. And then ask it in the meeting. And then, this is the critical part. Stop talking. Listen to the full answer before saying anything. No counter argument, no reassurance, just listening. And if you do this consistently for a month, your team's relationship to you will change in ways that will show up on your next retention report. That's not a promise I make lightly. It's a pattern I've seen repeat across organizations of every size and industry. Empathy, practiced consistently, compounds. Comment below what question you're going to ask. And so, the 3C diagnostic is how I open every coaching engagement. If you want to go through it for your specific situation, what your curiosity, clarity, and conviction scores actually are, and what to do about your lowest one, that's what a discovery call is for. The link's in the description, and I welcome you to come ready to be honest. Thanks for joining today.